Hi, folks. I'm Marcel, back with The Pulse. Today, I want to speak about somebody that I had a lot of respect for and looked up to, and still look up to and respect the work that he did, Anthony Bourdain. Now, I watched a documentary which was apparently unauthorized, although a lot of the people interviewed in this documentary were personal acquaintances or co-workers of Anthony Bourdain's. And I want to talk about this documentary and the impact it had on me, and also the impact that he had on me prior to his passing. Now, I was a little late to the party, but eventually started watching regularly, Parts Unknown. We were close to the same age. He's about 3-4 years older than me, and I really looked up to him at the time. Keep in mind, by age 53, 54, 55, I was pretty much on a big-time decline. And I'm looking at Anthony Bourdain, who's a few years older at that time, and I really envied where he was in his life and the things he was doing, the travel he was doing, the way that he was able to, talk about food and didn't seem to gain a single pound, whether that was because he was a frequent smoker when he was younger and he eventually did quit. I don't know when exactly that happened, but he seemed to be able to eat and drink and live a really fun life, at least on his show, without any consequences. He was very slender, he seemed very healthy, and he spoke very well. He was a very good thinker. He was a clear thinker, at least the way he projected himself. So if he was clear of mind and his body was in good shape, okay, it begs the question, what exactly happened? And there were three things that really devastated me about the way that he took his own life. The three things were that he clearly had a lot of talent. He was a published author, multiple books. He had a very successful television show. He was very good at his television show. He also had a young child. Now, I wasn't even aware that he had a young daughter. I think she was 12 when he passed, give or take, but I could relate to him in some way. I looked up to him, and it turns out we both had young children. And when he passed, or when he took his life, it was a real gut punch. The thing that really got me personally is that I live here in Europe. One of my favorite places to go is Strasbourg, Colmar, the region of Alsace of France, which borders Germany. It's very scenic. The food is amazing. The people are amazing. And it's really just a fun place to go and visit. And I never get tired of it. I always said, if I could only live in one city and never leave, it'd be Strasbourg, France, because it has everything, modern and old. And it's just beautiful, and the food's amazing. And like I said, the people have always been just wonderful to us. So the fact that he took his life in Kaiserberg, Alsace, France, which is just west of Colmar, south of Strasbourg, the region that I visited many times, it really added to the gut punch that it was, that he took his life there and that it seemed way too premature. I wondered, was he sick? Was he ill? So when I watched the documentary on this flight home recently, Roadrunner, I'm looking for clues. Like, you already know the ending, so you're trying to fill it in with some explanation, right? What happened? What really happened? The best I could surmise by watching the documentary about his life, or at least his life from about 40 on to 60, was that he was emotionally impaired. Now, we talk a lot about, on this channel, at least I talk a lot about, and you comment a lot about, physical impairment of aging, mental impairment of aging, the deterioration of our bodies and our minds, our focus and our energy. But almost never do we talk about anything relating to emotional impairment due to aging. And what I took away from this documentary was that Anthony Bourdain was emotionally impaired. He could not function, and it seemed to worsen as he aged. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think this is something, even though he joked about in his 40s and 50s, I could use that rope to take my life or whatever. Yes, it was on his mind. Yes, he was wired to think in that way in some in some manner. But he never did it until he reached a certain age. And you can see his aging, the effects of his aging, in the final pictures and videos that he did. He really did look aged. He looked like he aged quite a bit the last few years of his life. If you looked at him around 55 and 60, it really took hold. I'll be 60 the end of this year. He took his life at age 61. So you can see that there are, I was on a physical path and a mental path that was in decline. But I was also, in some way, emotionally impaired at age 50 to 55. And I really didn't maybe come to terms with it the way I have now until I saw what it did to him. I just think that if talking about this helps one person, and I know that that's cliche, but literally, if we can save one person by talking about something we rarely ever speak about, emotional impairment in general, but specifically brought on due to aging and how it can worsen your state of mind, how you can feel hopeless, helpless. Absolutely, I felt hopeless. I went online on a whim. I searched out David Sinclair and NMN and started taking supplements out of desperation. I was looking for something to rescue me because exercising and eating right wasn't doing it for me. The only thing that had an abrupt turn for me was when I started taking NMN. And I can't help but wonder how many people might be in Anthony Bourdain's boat. He's unsavable, right? We can't go back in time. We can't guess. We can't second guess what would have happened had he found NMN and had he had the kind of life change that I've had. But what we can do is try to speak to others and try to draw some parallels from our own experiences to possibly what Anthony Bourdain was going through. Personally, it's not that much of a stretch for me to say that I was feeling emotionally impaired as well. I don't talk about that part of it. I talk about, I have mentioned panic attacks, but I don't think I made quite the leap to something that, in our masculine society, even as woke as we've all become, right, we still are very proud and too proud to talk about both mental and physical and impairments of aging. Nobody wants to admit to them, but we certainly don't want to admit to the fact that maybe we're emotionally deteriorating as well, and that aging can also be emotionally debilitating. And I do think watching the documentary, you could see a story unfolding. You could see somebody drifting away. I don't know if that was just the editing, for dramatic effect of the documentary, but when you looked at him, you certainly saw slowly but surely a different person appearing before the camera. And because so much of those 20 years were on film, there was a lot of footage to glean from, to take away from. So we could really see a visual picture. Unlike in many situations, we don't get that vantage point. Suffice to say, Anthony Bourdain couldn't hide. His job was so public. The only things that he could hide were obviously his private thoughts and emotions. He could keep those in and try to mask them, but because we have the picture, because we know the ending, we know that he wasn't well. And the physical signs point to aging. Obviously, the result suggests that the situation of emotional damage or impairment worsened as he aged until this climactic moment when he gave up. So I think hopefully putting some light on the fact that we don't just deteriorate mentally, we don't just deteriorate physically as we age, but we can also weaken emotionally. We can also reach a point of hopelessness. And maybe recognizing that in ourselves or recognizing that in some people that we care about around us, maybe we can intervene or suggest to someone, hey, why don't you try to find a healthier way? Why don't you try some vitamins? Why don't you try to eat right? Why don't you try exercising? Intervene. Otherwise, we risk ending up like the people who knew Anthony Bourdain, knew something was wrong, and after the fact said, I wish I would have said something. Multiple people said, I wish I would have said something. I wish I would have done more. It's a very real thing. Like aging and the effects of aging are all too real. It's not something we talk about here to hype up. It's something we're all going to experience at some point in time. And the only question is, how well are we going to handle it? And for me, living healthier, certainly taking certain vitamins and supplements have empowered me to have an emotional rudder that's better functioning. And it's not just physical, it's not just mental, but there are actually emotions that I'm better equipped to handle on a day-to-day basis than I was prior to taking NMN. And hopefully this can impact somebody who might be also kind of at the end or feeling like they're at their end potentially to turn things around. There is hope. There are ways to improve yourself, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I encourage those of you that may be going through some of those challenges to seek help yourself or seek help for others who may be experiencing these challenges. I wish you all the best. This wasn't an easy video to make. This was it brought up a lot of the emotions of what happened, even though it's been several years now since he took his life. It seems like it was just yesterday. I mean, truth be told, it was 5.5 years ago, and I still have trouble even talking about it out loud because it was such a gut punch. But I really realized watching that documentary that I recognized something there that I'd seen before, that I'd felt before. And I began to internalize the emotions as I was watching this. And it was quite revealing, to myself, to my own thoughts and my own fears, and how I overcame so many things in the past few years. And I just wish that for more people. That's all I can really do. So I wish you all the best on your finding youthfulness and longevity journey, and I'll see you again soon.